it's really just about creating good movers and good movement patterns and learning how to rotate, because there's girls that I've worked with that are 7, 8, 9, 10 year olds that have the cleanest movements I've ever seen, like the best rotation, the best timing of rotation, compared to some collegiate athletes that are just, very stuck in how they load their arm, or they don't quite have good rotation, and things have kind of broken down over the years. So, we're just trying to see good movement first, and understanding, like, does this girl, because she's so young, she has really good rotation and really good sequencing. We just need to make sure nobody, number one, messes with her patterns, and number two, she learns how to strengthen and stabilize as she gets older.
All right, welcome to the Car Ride Home podcast. I'm excited to be back. We took a little bit of break over the summer, and I'm pumped because right now it's October and it is our designated arm care month. And I'm here with Austin Wasserman. Austin, I'll give a little bit of background here of what I have, and then we'll dive deeper into it. But owner and founder of High Level Throwing, High Level Pitching as well. Also Wasserman Strength, a strength coach, performance coach, and author, and former college and professional baseball player, which I'm sure we will talk a lot about that and how that got you into what you're doing. But Austin, welcome to the Car Ride Home podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jamie. I appreciate it. I know we've been doing a lot of stuff together the last couple of years, and I'm excited again every October. It's one of my favorite months of the year anyways, so adding arm care and throwing to it, it just kind of sweetens it up a little bit. So again, appreciate you having me on and listening about high level throwing.
It's fun. Before we dive into throwing, I do have to set the stage. We're on the car ride home. We call it that for a reason. So setting the stage first, what kind of music are we listening to in the car?
Whew. Oh man. I'm a 90s kid, so lots of 90s hip hop, 90s rock, just pretty much anything really. I like a lot of different things. So I'll start with that though, some 90s old school 90s hip hop or some 90s rock.
You're the second person that's gone 90s hip hop, which I love. Who's your favorite artist?
Wu-Tang Clan all the way. It's from a young kid.
Nice.
Nas, Wu-Tang, Biggie. Those are kind of my go-tos.
I love it. Okay, next most important question. Where are we eating on the car ride home?
We're going to stop and get some pizza for sure. That's what we're eating. Maybe some chicken parm pizza, barbecue chicken pizza, pepperoni, like anything pizza, I'm game. So that's what we're eating.
All right.
You down with that?
I could do that. I can do, especially depends on where we're at, but we can definitely. I'm down for that one. When I ask you, I think a lot of us as athletes growing up, or even parents too, that car ride home is a special time for you. When I say car ride home, what's the most memorable car ride home that you can remember?
Yeah, that's going back, but I think I played a lot of baseball, travel baseball, basketball, football, but baseball was my love. I played it forever since I was, 4 or 5, and then through college and professional. So I think 24 or 25 years old, I, kind of ended that dream. But I remember car rides home with other teammates and the bond that I had with friends, and just kind of that whole process of going to games with teammates and coming home from games, and just kind of like thinking about what we did, how the game went, but also just kind of like letting it be, and letting whether we won, or whether we lost, or whether we did awesome, or if we had over 4 or 4 strikeouts, just kind of being in that moment. And I just remember like looking out the window, thinking about my approach, my at bats, but also again just like being with my friends and being with my teammates is something that just stood out to me. And I remember, this is going way back, my buddy had a big caravan, and we hooked up, he didn't have any iPads or anything like that. So hooked up a TV like in the car, which was, big. So it's like this big box TV hanging in the corner of the minivan. And then we folded the seats down, put some blankets back there, and, watched our movies. So, those are the memories that I had. And I'm sure, lots and lots of athletes feel the same way with that. It's just a really cool feeling. I wish I could obviously go back and do that, but so this is why, when you're doing it when you're young, just cherish it, appreciate it, because it goes by pretty fast.
Yeah, it does. We clearly are about the same age because I remember the same thing with those car rides and we had that big TV with like the built-in VCR that was literally a box that we put in the
Exactly
car.
what it was. Yeah, and we put like the bungee cables to like wrap around it to secure it to the inside of the van. So, a little makeshift TV. But yeah, I'm glad you remember that too.
It's
So
spent a lot of time, especially going to sports. Let's go back to your childhood because I'm sure that shaped a lot of what you're doing now. And you mentioned baseball, but you're from the Northeast, correct? Can you give a little bit of what did childhood look like, and then your progression through playing sports?
yeah, well, I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. My whole family's from New York area, and then I moved to New Hampshire when I was, just a baby. So I grew up in New Hampshire area. I went to elementary school, middle school, high school. I played baseball, basketball, football. Um, I had an older sister. My parents were, very supportive of anything I was doing, sports related, like, practice, games, whatever it was, made sure that I was there. But I was also accountable. Like I wanted to show up early for everything that I did, no matter what it was. So, my parents felt that too. So they would always get there early with me. And, we're like there an hour early before we actually have to be there, just kind of sitting in the car and just waiting or whatever that might be. So they were really supportive of me playing and traveling. And even through, high school and college and professional, they would travel all over the place too. But baseball was, really what I loved. Um, I did have opportunities to play football in college, but just realizing the nature of the game, how aggressive it was for me, I wanted to stay in sports longer, and I'm like, that's probably not the right approach for me at this point. So, getting the opportunity to play baseball was something that obviously I dreamed about. So, my childhood was fun, lots of travel games. I remember getting a training net for one of my birthdays when I was like 9 or 10, a little like backstop net, and I used to hit into it, throw into it. I had a garage with the back of the chimney. I used to throw into and do like ground ball work and like work like angle throws. I didn't know what I was doing, but I loved having a ball and a glove and just throwing and having a bat and swinging. So I was lucky. I grew up in New Hampshire, just had some really good friends that also believed in what I believed in terms of playing the game at a high level. So, lots of sandlot, lots of wiffle ball. Um, pretty much anytime we could play, we were playing. Like jackpot 500, throw the ball up in the air, see if whoever can catch it. Like pickle, all those games that you played in the neighborhood with your friends or neighbors, whoever it was. It was just like a free for all. Like let's see who can compete, but no one's keeping score or anything like that. It was just like this internal competition that you had. So, I was fortunate to have that in my neighborhood and growing up in a family that supported sports as well. So, yeah, I was really, really, really lucky for that reason. Yeah.
I might be jumping ahead, but you said something there that I grew up the same way, right? Of playing pickle, playing. My dad and I would play this game called we made it up, but one hop, and
Yeah.
you weren't necessarily even coaching, but you were just naturally throwing or naturally moving. Do you think that's lost sometimes? Like if you go back and you look at like how you were throwing, what you were doing, you might not have even known back then, but was it almost better to have just like the natural motion that kids had?
Sure. I think there's still, some of that today. There's kids that are playing in the front yard or like they get home and they're like, that's all they do. But I think, you know, baseball or softball or a practice or a skill session has become something that's like on the schedule to do and not necessarily like I want to do it because I want to do it. It's like, oh, I got Thursdays hitting, I got Fridays strength, I got Tuesdays, this, and it just starts to become very scheduled, and it's obviously it's hard because kids have lots of things they have to do, but I think just going home and just you know doing the skill, whether you have something on the schedule or not, because you want to do it. I think some of that has been lost. But again, there's still some kids that do that. But I feel like in the majority, like I hope we get back to that. Um, but that's kind of where how I grew up is just throwing, hitting, swinging. If you're playing with bigger kids, you're gonna imitate them and see what they do. And same thing for the younger girls when they're playing, or the younger boys when they're playing. They're looking at the older kids to see how they go about their work, their skill, the sport, because then they want to imitate and emulate that. So, yeah, I hope it does get back to that. But yeah, playing like sandlot or wiffle ball, like I'm not seeing a lot of that lately. But you drive around a field, here, and it's like no one's on the field. Like, where is everybody? So, and I hope that does change.
It's a good point about the scheduled practices for sure with that. Let's go back. So
Yeah.
now you go play, went to University of New Orleans first, correct? And then you went to UConn to play
Hmm.
college baseball and then played independent ball in the pro league. Can you talk a little bit about that journey and essentially how that got you to where you are right now?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a Major League Baseball strength coach. That was kind of what I wanted to do. If I couldn't play as a player, I wanted to be around it in some capacity. So that was my dream. So after high school, I went to University of New Orleans. I played for 2 years. I ended up transferring before Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. So I was already out of there transferring, and then Hurricane Katrina hit in that following year. So I was very very lucky. I transferred to University of Connecticut and kind of found my way through some of the academics. I got into the kinesiology program at the University of Connecticut. Really dived into the human body and movement, and great professors that I had at UConn to kind of give me a really give me a good pathway and a foundation to where I'm at today. So I really thank those professors for providing the information for me. So after UConn, I had an opportunity to play professional baseball. Independent baseball. I wasn't drafted. It was didn't sign in an organization. So I just still wanted to play. I wanted to do the game that I love and continue playing it. So um, again, in the back of my mind, it's like, okay, I know there's going to be an opportunity because I studied exercise physiology and a focus in kinesiology. That was my background. So I knew I wanted to be in it, but I wanted to continue to play and see how far I could go. So I played 2 years of independent baseball, one in Worcester for the Worcester Tornadoes, and one year the Nashua Pride in Nashua, New Hampshire. So I played 2 years, and after that, I was like, you know, I'm I really want to teach, and I'm like more passionate about educating and using what I learned in school to help other athletes and coaches. And it wasn't like right after school I started doing throwing. It was kind of this process of like, how did I get from a major league wanting to be a major league baseball strength coach to just working on throwing with athletes of all ages, all different positions. So kind of interesting. Um, so after school and after independent baseball, I actually went back to school while I started a company training athletes. So I ended up going back to school to get my master's in clinical nutrition, which I haven't really done too much with, but um, I wanted to have that background just to work with athletes because again I wanted to be a strength coach. Um, at the same time, I started a company working with athletes, just general strength, general hitting, general movement. I wasn't specific to throwing at all. So pretty much from I would say 2008 or 2009 to about 2013 or 14, I wasn't really focused on throwing as much. I was really just about strength, speed, agility. I had a small facility in New Hampshire that I ended up getting a lot of athletes and growing and expanding. But that's another story at another time, or we can get into that actually in a little bit. But um, I had the facility in New Hampshire. I just started to grow and evolve, and you know, I had one mom come to me with her daughter to help her throw, and I was like, doesn't everyone know how to throw? Like, I'm just a strength coach. Like, we're going to get you strong. We're going to get you really, really fast and explosive, but we don't really need to do like skill stuff. That's not why you're coming to me. So it was kind of like, all right, let's get you on video. Let's see you throw. And then we'll, get to all of our more important stuff at the time. Like for me, I'm like, all right, we got to get you strong. And, just not realizing that basic foundational skills were not mastered. So, we got video and she threw and I was like, whoa, this is really, really bad. And I like didn't know what to do. I was just doing, like basic throws against a wall or a net. Like I honestly don't remember as much what I did that first session because I was just like, it was so much going on. And then she left and then I had and actually like a dad bring his son to me maybe the following week. And he was like, can you teach him how to pitch? I was like, yeah, no problem. Like I play baseball. Like, you know how to throw. It's easy. And he got on the, like the little flat ground and he started throwing. I was like, like, yikes. What's going on here? Is this New Hampshire or is this an issue everywhere? So I was, same thing. I didn't really know what to do because of how awkward the kid's motion was. I didn't know where to start. So, after those sessions, I was kind of looking at video and, realizing like, wow, these are pretty bad movements. Like I need to help these kids. So, from there I started to work and get into some like really crazy stuff and different drills. And this is when I'm exploring on how to figure out how to help these kids. And while I was doing that, I had just more parents bringing their kids to me to help them pitch and throw. And for me, I was like, yeah, this makes sense because I'm not going to get them strong, powerful, very explosive when they can't do basic skills. Otherwise, I'm just going to, build an engine and, they're just going to have, nothing behind it. So I really wanted to create a structure for these kids to learn and progress the right way, but also to help coaches and parents teach this, when they're not with me. So, there was a long period of time where I'm exploring, I'm testing different drills, I'm seeing how these athletes respond. And, it was a process. One girl got better in, a year and a half, one boy got better in 2 years, and then the process starts to get better and we evolve. And, now they're making changes like that session or in a couple of days or in a couple of weeks. And or they have a better mindset. So, it just started to evolve that way, like kind of organically happen. I wasn't out to work with throwers. It was just like there was this need that I found in my area and I wanted to help. And it just so happened that a lot of other coaches, a lot of other players and parents needed help with this specific skill. So, from there, I just started writing a little bit, blogs and getting video with all of my athletes and posting it and just trying to help as many coaches and players as possible. So, that's kind of where high level throwing evolved and started. It was almost by mistake. It was like, hey, I want to be a strength coach, but wait a second, these kids can't throw. Like the basis of defense is throwing and catching. If they can't do these skills, they're not going to be very good and they're going to quit this game. They're going to get very frustrated and they're going to move on to something else and the game won't grow. So I was, there's all sorts of patterns that came to me and I just started to identify certain things. These athletes tend to do these things. Okay, these drills are great for them. Or these kids tend to do these types of movements. All right, these drills are great for them. And then over time, they just start to improve their ability to move to, whether it's loading their shoulder blade, rotating better, whatever it might be, but just helping these kids identify what they're doing, but also the coaches and parents are understanding and implementing the right things for the kids. So it's definitely it was like, I don't know, a process to getting high level throwing to where it was, but it's definitely really cool. And I appreciate everyone supporting a skill like throwing.
Yeah, well, you said it right. Everybody needs it in our game, right? Everybody is throwing. I love that from your playing career through just working with movements and bodies and strengths, how that evolved to throwing. I learned too of just what your path was. Tell me about softball specifically, because I know you still work with baseball players as well. I'm obviously partial on the softball side. I feel like you're moving that way too. But how did, besides the one athlete that
Yeah,
came
very
in,
much so.
how did that evolve, and how has softball continued to evolve for you? I want to pause for a minute to tell you about the Alliance Fast Pitch. The Alliance Fast Pitch is a national league system for amateur softball. I like to think of us as the pathway to play and the pathway to develop. If you're a youth softball coach or parent of a youth softball player, we know at the end of the day, you just want what's best for your daughter. But sometimes it's hard to figure out where to go or where to start. We're here to help you with that and to make your job easier. Softball is an important part of your life, but it's only a small part of your life. Think of the Alliance Fast Pitch as your one-stop shop for everything. Build your fall, spring, summer schedule of tournaments inside your region. Compete on a level playing field to earn your national championship berth. Join a community of fellow youth softball coaches, parents, and athletes. Check out our national leaderboards for all ages. Understand where your daughter stacks up compared to her peers inside her region or even nationally. Help your daughter get recognized nationally through our player recognition programs and get access to all of the discounts and benefits of being an annual Alliance member. We brought the best in the industry into one home so we can provide softball families with access to the best resources at a more affordable price. We built the Alliance Fast Pitch on two principles: collaboration and putting the athlete first. Together, we can grow. Together, we can do better for our athletes. Be a part of the fastest growing softball community. We're here to make your life easier and your experience in softball better. Join us today. Join the Alliance Fast Pitch by going to thealliancefastpitch.com and follow us on all of our social media platforms.
Yeah. So again, softball was just something that organically happened. It was me just writing a lot of information down, and it just kind of trickled into the softball community. Coach Pat Murphy at Alabama actually is the first one that reached out to me. He called me in my office in like 2000, I think 14 or 15. And the caller ID comes up. It's like Patrick Murphy, I'm like freaking out. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, do I pick it up? I talked to him, and he's like, hey, I'm Patrick Murphy at University of Alabama. I see what you've been writing about throwing, and I've been around the game for a while. He's like, I won a national championship in 2012, but I'm always looking to learn. So I was like, whoa. He's like, would you be willing to, talk throwing and tell us your thoughts about what you've been, doing? And I've obviously been reading everything you're doing, got your downloaded books, and we just want to hear more. So I ended up getting an opportunity to talk to Coach Murph and Coach Allison at Alabama, and I talked to him about high level throwing. And from there, it was just like he kind of talked to Coach Wade Wilson at Texas Lutheran University, and he brought me out there. And then I think from there, like Coach Tar at Washington had mentioned me or talked about me, and then brought me out to school to work with her players. I'm in her staff. So it just kind of, evolved. Like I can't thank Coach Murph enough for just giving me the opportunity to talk about throwing, first off, and then having him say, like, you might want to check him out. Like, he might have some stuff for your athletes or coaches that could help some of your players, or break through some of those weird patterns that, you might have on your team. So from there, it just kind of evolved, like all these rec programs and travel organizations and high schools and Division I programs and Team USA are like all using these really basic foundational patterns, drill work, but understanding that the movements are specific to overhand throwing and to their position. So it's definitely evolved tremendously. But definitely more on the softball side. I guess I feel that in baseball, everyone learns overhand throwing because pitching is overhand throwing. But in softball, we want our young kids to learn how to pitch, and it's a completely different movement than the overhand throw. So young kids are not really taught how to rotate their hips or their torsos because they're always just like trying to learn that linear movement of pitching. So we lose out on some quality rotational ability at the younger age to learn how to generate good overhand throwing sequencing. So I think, because we want everyone on our team to learn how to pitch, because, we don't know who's going to be a stud pitcher, and we want them to learn it because it's a hard skill. But we also don't want to, eliminate their opportunities to create good overhand throwing patterns as well, and kind of pigeonhole them into one position. Like, oh, you've been a pitcher your entire life. Like, because you've never done anything other than that movement. So I think learning to throw at the younger ages, that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, to learn how to just use your hips, use your torso, because you're like, you never know where you're going to be. Like, you could have an injury pitching and like all of a sudden you got to play third or first or corner outfield position. And you're like, oh, I've never thrown overhand before more than 10 times in a week. So it's just getting these kids to learn how to do it earlier. I think will benefit, especially because there's a different skill between pitching and position players.
You said so much good stuff there, and I want to go because when I was at A&M and I had just gotten there, and I grew up playing baseball, so throwing was always
Mm,
very, very important. And I guess I just assumed when I got to college that everybody could throw and knew how to throw, and that was not the case. Even at a
sure.
Power Five, and you said it, Coach Murphy comes off winning a national championship and still wants you to come in and work with his
Right.
throwers, a drill that or a skill we just said everybody's got to learn how to do. What is that message of, because you work with the pro players, you work with the national team, you're working with college programs, but you're also working with the younger groups. So I guess
Mhm.
is there a difference when you go into these college programs and you're working with them, or is it just something they missed at a younger age? I guess what do those differences look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, we provide the same patterns and movements to our 5, 6, 7 year olds as we do for our Olympic and collegiate athletes. The volume might change obviously a little bit. So instead of like 10 throws, the kids might be doing, 4 or 5 throws. And also we're not using specific, loads. So like if we're doing strength training movement, we're not going to, give a kid a dumbbell that he can't, they can't control. Um, so it's really just about creating good movers and good movement patterns and learning how to rotate, because there's girls that I've worked with that are 7, 8, 9, 10 year olds that have the cleanest movements I've ever seen, like the best rotation, the best timing of rotation, compared to some collegiate athletes that are just, very stuck in how they load their arm, or they don't quite have good rotation, and things have kind of broken down over the years. So, we're just trying to see good movement first, and understanding, like, does this girl, because she's so young, she has really good rotation and really good sequencing. We just need to make sure nobody, number one, messes with her patterns, and number two, she learns how to strengthen and stabilize as she gets older. So for those types of athletes, being able to like stabilize and control the shoulder and just get stronger will be more beneficial for them. Athletes that, have limited range of motion or limited skill ability, but are very strong, very powerful, you're going to work more on the skill side, more of like the arm stuff, or the, hip to shoulder separation, or whatever you want to call it. Those are things that you'll be working with those types of athletes. So, it's always interesting just to see when I go into collegiate programs, or if I go to a rec league, you start to see the same thing: poor rotation, and either a weird like push of the ball through ball release at all levels. Like, you see that no matter, again, if they're an Olympic athlete, again, there's fewer of them as you get older and, more experience. But, like when you get to the rec leagues and like the middle schools, even some high schools, even some of the BC travel teams too, you're getting poor movers and athletes that don't know how to rotate, so they're compensating for other things. So that's why, like, learning how to, learning what your hips do, learning what your back hip does, learning what your front leg does, learning what your arm does, and then putting it all together for, at a early age, is going to benefit them as they progress through their journey.
It's so good. You said pushers of the ball. I can see some throwers that I know of just pushing. What do you think?
Yeah.
You probably get asked this question a lot. What do you think about the young player with the small hands as a female and the bigger ball?
Hmm?
Does that play into it at all? The weight of the ball, the size of the ball?
Yeah, well, I think, we have a heavier ball than a baseball and a larger ball than a baseball, and athletes have smaller hand, like some of the younger girls have smaller hands. So having that, all those things together is just kind of a disaster for not learning how to use the shoulder blade to load the arm back, because kids are like supporting the ball with their hand because their hands are so small that in order to load the arm back, they have to push it. They can't like grip the ball and then load back because it just like falls out of their hand. So using tennis balls or baseballs or even like the mini softballs, like there's like a 9 inch or 10 inch softballs. I don't know if they have those or not, but getting something for the younger kids, like the 5, 6, 7 year old, 8 year old, 9 year old age group, so that they can actually grip as they do the movements. I had a 6 year old clinic, a 3 hour 6U clinic. There was like 5 kids in that class.
Oh,
That was
bless
tough,
you.
but the parents were there. The parents were there, like yelling at the kids, and I'm like, they yell at them, just like get them. Like, they can come over here. Like one kid's running over there, one kid's, but these kids are really good movers. They just need to be set up the right way, and then they can do the actual exercise at a fairly, pretty high level. So if you can create these movers at an early age, just like, hey, like kneel here, load your arm back, you're going to create less restrictions as they get older. And they're going to be able to feel what it's like to use their shoulder blade, to rotate their torso, what their glove should be doing. Because, some of these high school kids are not really sure like what their shoulder blade does, what their glove side should do, or even like where their body is in space. So, giving these kids the ability to learn that at a young age, we know it's going to be messy. We know it's going to be like all over the place, but they're still doing things in the right like progressions.
If I'm a high school athlete, college athlete, maybe I do have some bad habits. I'm not a good mover. Can you fix that?
Mm.
Is that something that I can work on, or by the time I develop those bad habits, is it unfixable, if that's a word?
No, there's been athletes that I've worked with at the collegiate level where, they're 19, 20, 21 years old that have gone through an entire career of softball that have made very good changes in their throws and actually increased velocity, whether it's 2 miles an hour or 5 miles an hour. I don't think we've had anyone in the collegiate aspect going higher than 5 mile an hour increase yet, but we do see it at the elite level. It does happen. You want to be able to make these changes, but it's also being able to put the time to make these changes. Like some girls are very visual and they're very kinesthetic. Like if you put them through a certain pattern, they get it, or if you show it to them one time, they understand it. And some athletes, like it takes a while. It's like you have to tell it to them auditory, like tell it to them, then you have to take it through them. They have to show them video, and then like repeat the steps in the process. So, we do make sure that they're understanding the movement so they can make changes. But if they're not learning a certain way, it can be difficult. So just gotta make sure that your athletes in that capacity.
You mentioned velo. How important is overhand velocity in your mind? And what are some of the, I thought that was interesting of your college athletes of maybe 5 miles per hour is what they can gain.
Hmm.
What are you seeing? So I guess first question, how important is overhand velo and how hard I throw? And then what are you seeing? What are the ranges that I can actually increase my overhand velo?
Yeah. There's a lot of information there. Velocity is obviously a good indicator of how efficient you are at rotating, generating power. It's a good indicator if an athlete is a righty thrower, righty hitter, and they throw a certain amount of miles per hour. It's a good indicator that they might be able to, barrel up and kind of swing and do some damage from the right side as well. So there's there's some numbers I'm going to put out there, and again, it's not like the end all be all of velocity because there's outliers everywhere, and based on your position, like if you're a second baseman that or a shortstop that's a stud, it's quick, agile as a slapper, like you don't have to throw 75 miles an hour, like it's playing to your position and understanding, your role as an athlete. So, 60 miles per hour is kind of what most college coaches look at, or what a lot of athletes and coaches are kind of trying to get their players to, or the athletes trying to get to, because it does show that they can rotate pretty effectively, um, and they can sequence their body somewhat effectively to generate power. So if you have athletes that are doing that, that, okay, like let's see, they might be, a real explosive athlete where they're sprinting really fast, or they're hitting the ball really far. So it is a good indicator of rotating and power output. Um, there are athletes that are in the 70s. There's some athletes that are in the mid to high 70s, which is ridiculous. Like, it's really, really hard and really powerful. And that's, kind of on like maybe a crow hop, or a run and gun, or some type of like backpedal shuffle throw. So maybe not an in-game, velocity, but something where they're ramping up and building up energy to release the ball. So, you have your like 70, to 70 mile an hour or higher, which is like elite movers, like really clean sequencing, um, just good movement in general. The 60 to 70 mile an hour range, of course, you are still moving very efficiently. Um, the lower 60s, like I've seen 60, 61, 62, be reached, but it can be kind of awkward in some stronger, bigger athletes, like maybe some bigger first basemen or catchers, that don't move or rotate or sequence as effectively. So they might still hit the number, but the patterns visually might look off, or they might have, like some irritation somewhere in their throwing routine, or their throwing process. So, that's that velocity group, 60 to 70. And then 50 to 60, it's a wide range of athletes. Like, you might have a 10-year-old athlete that hits 55, but a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old athlete that hits 50. So, I'm seeing a lot of, 50 to 55 is kind of like 12, 13, 14. Of course, there's kids going to be hitting 60, 65. There was a 12-year-old athlete that hit 68 that I work with. It's just like, she
Wow.
was 5'11", just like long limbs, outfielder. It's just,
Wow.
it's crazy. So, the middle school, you're getting anywhere from 30 to 55. In high school, you can get anywhere from 45 to 60. And then, in college, typically you're, 60 plus. So, there's all these numbers that I kind of put out there. Is it important? Yes, but is it practical? Like, you have to have practical velocity as well. Like, again, if you're a second baseman that's really quick and efficient, like, don't try and get 65. Like, know your velocity and then work on your other skills. If you're a catcher that needs some arm strength, all right, cool, let's do a little bit of stuff. If you're an outfielder that needs a little bit of arm strength or a little bit of velocity, then we can, kind of focus on it. But, really focus on the movements, the patterning. Velocity is more of a byproduct of good sequencing, strength and conditioning, using some of like the plyo ball work, like for patterning and proprioception. Um, you know, are you sleeping? Are you eating really well? Those are things that to make the complete athlete, you know, but, I think the throwing really needs to start from a pattern standpoint and learning how to move the right way, and velocity becomes a byproduct. And to your question too, like, can you create better movers? Like, if you're doing dynamic warm-ups every day, very focused, you're going to get better at moving in those capacities. So, single leg work, even like karaoke's is just like such a basic old school drill, but you can get good like hip to trunk relationship as you do the movements. Like Spider-Man crawls are great for hip mobility and shoulder strength. When you're crawling on the ground, any type of like crawling is fantastic for shoulder strength. Lunges, side lunges, you're learning how to stabilize and control your body. So being able to, do those things is going to help you become a better mover. In the weight room is going to make you become a better, athlete because you're getting stronger, you're learning how to produce force, and then you're learning your skills. So you're combining all these really cool components to help make you the best throwing athlete you can.
So good. So good. I like that. We're making better movers. That's going to be like I like that phrase. It's not necessarily throwers. I want to do some fun, like kind of rapid fire, one of the first things that pops into your head type questions.
Sure.
What's
Sure.
what's one throwing drill that you want to see go away completely?
Go away completely will be the wrist flicks.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. The old school wrist flips. What's wrong with them?
Yeah, the old school wrist flicks. So, the wrist flick drill, and I was taught them forever because the coaches wanted to like create a backspin, like a 12-6 backspin. And what happens with that positioning is, number one, like 12-6 backspin doesn't really happen unless you are pushing the ball like out in front, or you turn your body so far to the left that your arm is like released straight over, like over the top. You can have like 12 like backspin, but it can be at a different axis. So like a low arm slot, like an angle throw, think of like a catcher throw versus a shortstop double play, or an outfield throw versus, like a third baseman on the run angle throw to first base. So backs like this 12-6 backspin doesn't really exist. And we're also training our athlete's brain that when we throw, we have to let the arm go in front of our body to release it versus letting the chest and the body carry the arm into external rotation before your arm extends. So like this movement is completely different than like an unravel movement of your body and your arm. So we've trained kids to basically create really bad throwing patterns. Like they might have really good load in their hip, they might have a good like arm load back, but then their arm goes in front of their body versus allowing their torso to carry their arm through ball release. So, doing like all these like separation drills where, maybe someone puts their hand on their arm and they just like rotate their hips, rotate their chest before they throw. So we have lots of different drills to help combat that because we find it's probably one of the biggest issues in overhand throwing. Like some kids will start to figure out how to load their arm back, but it's challenging for them to figure out like, okay, once my arm's loaded, like how do I transition it through ball release? Like, do I just like do this and then like bring my arm forward? So, the wrist flick, I have to say the L drill is probably one of the other ones we should get rid of, where you're just like, pointing the arm away and like,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. So that one, I mean, I would probably say both because now you're not telling your athletes how the arm should actually get to there or move through that. So now you're losing the loading pattern and you're losing the timing of or any tension or any sequencing that's correct in the throw. So it's just like destroying an athlete's ability to generate power and maximize their abilities. And that's like I started the arm behind drill. You've probably seen these setups before, and I went kind of exaggerated just because I wanted the elbow to be over the shoulder line. So kids were just like learning to keep the elbow, instead of like pushing and that dart throw. So I started here and then it started to get like more, natural to an actual throw. So kids can understand it. Like, why am I throwing like this? I don't want to throw like that. It's just a way to like feel the elbow staying above the shoulder plane, the shoulder line, to prevent the kids from, pushing. So I started to get, these drills and people were like, you're an idiot. And that's, it's fine. But I was trying to explore trying to get these patterns out of these kids and explore ways um, to make better overhand throwers. And like this was not doing it, and that was not doing it because I was coaching, I was teaching, and I'm saying to myself like, why aren't my infielders throwing on the run like really professionally like they should be? Instead, they're like fielding it and like pointing the ball away
Oh
and then
yeah.
throwing. I'm like,
Oh,
I gotta change. So, I was teaching this because I didn't know any better. It was what was taught to me. So I was just implementing it, and then it's like over time, I'm like, there's got to be better ways to like get their torso to rotate and
that's
their hips to move. So it just kind of evolved from there, just seeing what was being taught and how I could potentially improve just the athlete's movement patterns, because I didn't want to like sit there and work with a kid that wasn't rotating the right way. Like I even had him like sitting in the swivel chair, learning how to rotate and like sitting down to throw off of a wall, which is like, yeah, I remember I was in my master's class and I was in the back, and there was like these like swivel chairs, and I was doing all these drills, and the professor was like, yes, you have a question? And I was like, everyone looked at me, and I'm like, literally this like pause, like throwing, and I'm like, no, I'm okay, I'm good.
who's this guy?
Just got an itch. Who's this guy? So I'm like working on my throwing. This is 2000, and I remember 2011, I think 2012. Um, that was in class doing that. So yeah, it was just I just wanted these kids to just do better at moving first, so I can then apply the programming that I wanted to apply.
Well, and I need to apologize for kids that I used to work with because same thing, right? We were taught this, and we were taught to like get the ball back there, and that's a big reason why we're working together too, is because we want to expand this conversation to more and more throw movers. I'm going to call them movers, but
Absolutely.
I never fault the parent that volunteers to coach their kid, right? Because they're
No,
volunteering, and they're usually we go back to what were we taught, right? What did I learn in high school? What
sure.
did I learn in travel ball? Even for me, what did I learn in college? And so I never fault those parents who are just trying to help, but it's like, man, we got to get them better information, which is exactly what
Yeah,
we're trying to do here. Which which
totally.
sorry, you can expand on that. As that's my tangent of like
No,
that's why I
no,
love
go
talking
ahead.
with you and trying to expand this.
Yeah, no, I'm excited, and I know we have some fun stuff coming up too. But yeah, it's always been about educating the parents and the coaches first, so that they can relay the message, because they're going to be working with them more than we'll be working with them. And that's the reasons why like the training guides and the like all the writing that I've done is just to get information out there so people are aware of how to do these movements, because again, you're throwing is not like hitting, or like it's a sensitive joint, like it's a very unstable joint, one of the most unstable joints in the human body, and an aggressive movement like overhand throwing. So we have to really take care of it and strengthen our entire system so that our arm is working the right way. And I think a lot more kids and parents now are seeing the value in arm care and overhand throwing development, just because they're either injured throughout the summer, they're playing 100 games and they're missing these weekend tournaments due to an injury. So I think there's like people are seeing a lot more value, not just in hitting, in pitching, but in defense and overhand throwing development.
Absolutely. Well, let's go real quick through this, and I'd love to hear like who your answers are. So I wrote most athletic player, but now I want to change that to who's the best mover in softball that you've ever worked with.
Haley McClenny, like you tell her one movement and she like crushes it, but if she doesn't, she will get it like, and she will figure it out. Like doing the throwing patterns, like she's played the softball, she's played this game for a long time, and she can make changes to her arm pathway very, very fast because she understands her body. She knows where her body is in space. Um, but yeah, she's a phenomenal mover.
She's pretty good. She's pretty good. What's the hardest velo you've ever captured with a softball thrower? What's the hardest you've seen?
I've seen personally an athlete from Duke throw 77, I think it was. Um, but I believe Taylor Pleasance from LSU through 78. I did not see it, but I think she might have the hardest overhand throw in softball and college softball. But I would have to confirm that. That's just like lights out. I didn't see that um, firsthand, but yeah, anything in the 70, like 74, 75, that is absolutely lights out.
That's awesome. I want to see it. Now I want to know who's the hardest thrower in softball. Maybe we'll figure that out on Throw Like a
We,
Girl Day.
I think we're going to figure that out. We should probably figure that out and have a little challenge going, which we do.
Perfect setup. Austin, I know you enjoy educating. Where do you go to learn? What's your go-to to continue your own education?
Um, I I'm kind of a nerd, and I read a lot of the NSCA, like National Strength and Conditioning Association journals, trying to find ideas and ways from how other strength and conditioning coaches train their athletes to baseball and softball. So there's this guy, Stephen Jones. He's actually out in he's works with a lot of cricket players. I think he's in New Zealand or Australia. But he does a lot of different types of programming, cross training. Just I like utilizing movements from track and field, like javelin, shot put, um, like cricket thrower. Like there's some really good movements that are happening from like the lead leg stability or how their arm moves back. So I'm always reading just like strength and conditioning journals to figure out, maybe how I can add this to my programming in a safe and effective way. Um, there's also a guy called Franz Bosch, who does a lot with track and field. That his book is really difficult to read. It's complex. So it's like I read it like a million times, and there's lots of concepts I don't understand, but there's things that I can take from his approach and his teachings and being able to apply it to, again, baseball, softball, in terms of like lead leg stability or how the arm is supposed to load, or like different key points of like creating tension around a specific joint to relax another joint, to hopefully let the system work better. So, I am kind of going through that approach and trying to blend in um, some of the like the science from things that people are doing and studying and integrating and testing it out, but also seeing in the practical application like all these coaches utilizing it with their players, and just trying to learn every day, and maybe something will click and something different will come. But for me, it's let's hammer the basics first, like the basic movements, before we can get to all of your complex movements. And that's kind of how I've trained my athletes from a strength and conditioning standpoint, from a overhand throwing, pitching standpoint. It's like, let's build a foundation, let's master the basics. We can get really good and we can get really complex with the things that we already do. We don't have to go crazy with adding, let's just say, a power snatch or a power clean if we're already doing like broad jumps or banded jumps or accommodating resistance with like, bands or chains or something like that. So I think there's, that risk versus reward, like how strong am I trying to get versus how strong am I trying to get in order to transfer that to the field and play and, perform the way I need to perform. So we're kind of always in the way of that, but mastering the basics, doing the fundamentals, doing like the basic patterning is always, kind of at the top.
I love that. Someone told me I assumed you're a continuous learner there as well. What we're getting ready. We this will be the third year we've done our National Throw Like a Girl Day, which I think is a really fun. It's just I love that right there's been a whole movement of throwing like a girl, and what turning that into a negative and into a positive. When I say throwing
Sure.
like a girl, what does that mean for you, Austin?
Throwing like a girl means being confident, playing defense, being confident that like that you can throw somebody out from anywhere on the field. Um, I know Sarah and Haley, Sarah O'Brien, my other coach, and Haley, we always talk about like throwing like a girl is 65 miles an hour or more. Like that's what we want to see. We want to see girls throwing 65 miles an hour or harder. Maybe not when you're 9 years old or when you're 7 years old, but as you progress, through into high school and college and trying to get that goal. If 50 is your goal, then 60 is your next goal. If 60 is your goal, all right, now 70 is your next goal. So, we want to try and, create this environment, this culture of being strong, confident, like, yes, I can play defense. I can do a backhand on the run throw and get that runner out, or like I can throw from my knees to second base, like no big deal. And like, it's the same movement. Like baseball and softball is the same exact movement. There's nothing different about it. It's just rotation, sequencing, and how your arm moves through space. So, yeah, throw like a girl is like, let's get after it.
I love that.
Throw some lightning bolts.
I love that. Well, and I truly appreciate just working with you, and hopefully, I think we've talked about it from the beginning of creating movement. If I'm listening to this, I'm a parent, I'm a coach, maybe I'm an athlete. How do I keep training with you, Austin? Where can I go?
Yeah. So you can check out highlevelthrowing.com. We have lots of different ways you can train. We have some free training guides. We have training books for overhand throwing, strength, pitching. We have an online training program for athletes. We have a coaches course for coaches that want to, dive into it a little bit more. It's like everything high level throwing. We have lots of different training products like lightning balls for arm care and proprioception, like learning where the arm is in space, how to load the arm properly. And you get programs and training guides with all that stuff. So we have that. And then we also have clinics. We do a lot of clinic work with rec leagues, high schools, travel organizations, college programs, where we come out, we work with the coaches, we work with the athletes, teach them the drills, the programming, and then we provide the training guides and books back to the organization and players so they can, implement this stuff, so they don't forget what the heck they're doing and what we just taught them. So yeah, there's lots of different ways you can, email us and contact us on our website, but this is what we do. This is what we love. And we want to help with this skill because it's sometimes neglected and it's sometimes undertaught and undervalued. So I know Jamie and we've been bringing this thing to everyone's attention for quite some time. So I do appreciate that and what the Alliance has done for high level throwing and continues to do. So I'm pumped.
Well, it's mutual, Austin. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's changing softball. I know I'm seeing it from all levels. I was just talking to Tori Vidalis, and who was working or is working with you. And so I just love to see it from all levels. So thank you. I appreciate what high level throwing is doing, and be on the lookout for more Arm Care Month. And we got National Throw Like a Girl Day, which is always a lot of fun. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey guys, we hope you're enjoying the Car Ride Home podcast. Hopefully we're filling the air and making your car ride home a little bit more enjoyable. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, and leave us a review. If you have any special guest or requests that you'd like to hear, or have us bring a guest or a story onto the podcast, shoot us an email, info@thealliancefastpitch.com. We'd love to hear from you.